Hello everyone, this is Robin the Delta Crafter, and today I have a video for you where we're going to be talking about Pixie Spray. Let's get started. Pixie Spray is a spray that has come onto the market in craft supplies that is specifically made for working with stencils. It is a low-tack, repositionable adhesive that allows you to be able to spray it onto your stencil, and it will hold the stencil in place. So I'm going to be giving Pixie Spray a try today with 3 different stencils. This first stencil is an arrow stencil. It's clear and it's made by Die Cuts with a View. I've had this one in my stash for a while, so I'm not even sure what the name of it is. The next stencil that I'm going to be using Pixie Spray with is from Mr. Huey's. And then the last stencil that I'm going to be using it with is a Tim Holtz stencil. And this one is called Plus. So I'm going to get set up here with all of my things. I'm using Neenah Classic Crest Solar White paper in 80 pound. And I'm also going to be using a couple of Distress Oxide sprays on the first couple of cards. So what I'm doing here is I'm placing my stencil inside a cardboard box. This is probably from some order that I've received. And I'm going to give a light spray to the stencil with the Pixie Spray. I encourage you to spray, if you're going to spray Pixie Spray in the house, make sure you're in a well-ventilated area. So I've given my stencil a light spray, and now I'm going to put a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch card panel on my mat here, and I'm going to apply the stencil to the paper. So here I am placing the stencil onto the paper, making sure I have it exactly where I want it to be. Pressing it down, and then you can see that the stencil is adhered to the paper. The paper is sticking to the stencil, which means that I won't have any problems with the stencil lifting up. So the stencil is now adhered to my paper. For this card and for the next card, I'm going to be using 4 different colors of Distress Oxide inks. I have Squeezed Lemonade, Spiced Marmalade, Carved Pumpkin, and Fired Brick. So I also have a couple of blending brushes that I'm going to be using. And you can see here that I've placed some silver washi tape on these blending brushes. And that allows me to know, or lets me know that these are the blending brushes that I'm to use with Distress Oxide inks and not just regular Distress inks. So I have a couple of brushes that I have set aside just to use with Distress Oxides, since the ink formula is different than the original Distress inks. So I'm going in, I've already gone in with the Squeezed Lemonade. I'm going in with the Spiced Marmalade. Now I'm following up with Carved Pumpkin, and I'm going to finish up with Fired Brick. In the past, when I've tried to use stencils, one of the things that discouraged me from using them was my stencils would always move. And when the stencil moved, it would ruin my inking. And so I was anxious to give, or excited to give, Pixie Spray a try so I can see if that would be able to take care of my issue. And as you can see, as I pull the stencil back, it does work. I was very pleased with the results that I was able to achieve with the Pixie Spray. The blending is great. The adhesion was great. And it's to my understanding that if you store, depending on how you store the stencil, you could reuse that stencil without having to reapply the Pixie Spray. So now I'm going to move on to the Tim Holtz Plus stencil. We're going to give this one a try. I'm going to do as I did with the previous stencil, give it a light spray of the Pixie Spray on the back. Then I'm going to lay my stencil onto my paper, to my card panel. And there you can see that it's repositionable. And once I get that laid down and adhered, I'm going to move on to my blending. And I'm going to use the same 4 colors for ink blending on this card. The Squeezed Lemonade, the Spiced Marmalade, Carved Pumpkin, and Fired Brick. This time I'm going to go in at an angle. So just to switch it up just a little bit. Moving on. I mistakenly stuck my yellow brush into my orange ink. So I ended up having to clean that brush off later on to get that orange out of the orange ink out of the yellow brush, which is fine. It happens. We all make mistakes in crafting. And so now I'm going to go back in with the carved pumpkin, or I'm sorry, spiced marmalade, just a little bit to touch that up. And now let's see what the final product looks like. And again, we have a beautiful ink blended background with a stencil that turned out really, really nicely. So I'm pleased with the results. So now we're moving on to the third and final stencil, which is the Bubble Stencil from Mr. Huey's. So I'm going to take this stencil, and I decided to change ink colors with this, but first I'm applying a light coating of the Pixie Spray, and then I'm going to decide, since this is a bubble stencil, I need to use bubble light colors. So I'm going to switch over my ink colors here in just a moment. So for this particular card, I'm going to use regular distress inks, not the oxide inks, just regular distress inks. So the colors that I'm going to be using are Tumbled Glass, Peacock Feather, Mermaid Lagoon, and Salty Ocean. All the pretty blues. So we're going to start out with the Broken China. And these are the ink blending brushes from Tailored Expressions, which I absolutely love. They work very well. So I'm deciding to, instead of going in order, I'm just randomly placing spots of color all across the background or across my panel that I'm creating. So I'm going through all 4 colors, and I really like using at least 3 colors because it gives you a lot of variation, and you'll see that in the reveal. Then I'm going to finish up with the Salty Ocean. Getting all the little nooks and crannies there. So now as I pull back the stencil, you see my background. You can see all the different colors that I used and the cleanness of the white lines because the stencil did not move. So by and large, Pixie Spray is a winner for me. It is definitely going to encourage me to continue to use my stencils. So off camera, I went ahead and finished up the cards. I used a new stamp set that I recently purchased from the Stamping Village. It's called the Thinking of You stamp set. And I really like all the different sentiments that are in here, that are in this stamp set that have been contributed by all the different stamp companies that make up the Stamping Village. I really encourage you to check it out. You can find this stamp set on several different stamp company websites, including Hero Arts and Simon Says Stamp. Here are the completed and finished 3 cards. I hope you have enjoyed this video. If you have, please give me a thumbs up and hit the notification bell to be notified of when I post new videos. Thanks and have a great day, everyone. Enjoy!